When exactly did Saylor pivot his communication style, if he did at all?
Tell us what you found.
So I was thinking, I can use perception data to backtrack all of this and backtest it and see, hey, from 2020 to 2024, that was the era of Saylor being the Bitcoin maxi that everyone fell in love with. And you can see this in the report. Credit in 2020 to 2024 was deemed as something evil. And it seems though, like in 2024, beginning of 2025, all the words related to
Tell the people about Perception. Just came out of beta. What have you built? Give us the elevator pitch in 60 seconds.
It's what I call narrative engineering. So Perception takes everything that is being discussed about Bitcoin, stablecoins, like the entire digital asset industry, because all of this is relevant and you don't want to look at Bitcoin in isolation. We take everything that is being discussed on social, LinkedIn, Twitter, but also earnings calls. We create transcripts from conference panels, from podcasts, from white papers that central banks are doing. And we follow everything that is being discussed and we analyze it for you, we cluster it in trends, and we present it to you. So what you can do with that is if you are in the mining industry, you're a public mining company, and you want to see where's the discourse happening, what is the reception of certain competitors' product offerings, are they being covered in a good way, are they being covered in a bad way, you can now prepare yourself in terms of how you engineer your narrative, in terms of you standing out for your competitors, but also understand how the populace is thinking about your business and the industry sector that you belong in. And Bitcoin is turning into so many different things, so many different industry sectors. You got payments, you got infrastructure, you got compute, you got so many different things. And it's very hard to follow all of that thing using traditional methods like logging into X and looking at your timeline. You need the data, but you can't process that in a human way. So you need AI to process that data for you. And that data, we are the only ones who offer that for you. And we go back 15 years. So you can really do like a historical back test of any narrative, any story, any product that has been covered, any spokespersons, any companies that have been talked about, and you can see the trajectory. So that's the 60-second elevator pitch. And this is good for many use cases, but right now I would say 80% of my users are people that are in communications, investor relations, communications, PR, marketers, content creators. That's the target audience right now.
Well, there's one man in this space whose words have been dissected almost more than anyone, and that, of course, is Michael Saylor. And you just put out a report this morning on Saylor, his use of language, and the word Bitcoin. Tell us what you found.
Well, it's, a lot of people, when it comes to like narratives and like understanding how certain things are being talked about, they understand it at the very tail end when it has already happened, right? When it's obvious to everyone, like, oh, Saylor is a sellout and he's like, oh, he's not a real Bitcoiner, kill your heroes. That's what everybody's talking about right now because it's a fact, because it's out there. But so I was thinking, I can use perception data to backtrack all of this and backtest it and see, hey, when exactly did Saylor pivot his communication style, if he did at all? But it kind of like, I felt it right now that he had already done it, because obviously stretch and digital credit and all these things have been new terms and new words that had been kind of like repeated itself on the timeline for a little while. So it's like, let me go back to 2020 to, when Strategy or MicroStrategy at that time announced for the first time that they had bought Bitcoin, and then follow, all the tweets that Saylor did and also interviews that he did publicly in terms of like, what kind of language was he using at that time? And is there any difference between then and now? And I ran my agents with the Perception MCP and kind of like told them, hey, go ahead. And I tweeted like a picture. It was like 17 sub-agents that started like going and dissecting. And it was really crazy to see then, and this is what is in the report, it's like from 2020 to 2024, that was the era of Saylor kind of like being the Bitcoin maxi that everyone fell in love with, by utilizing on purpose a lot of like historical comparisons, if you guys remember, Bitcoin is digital Manhattan in the 1900s. It's so many kind of like repeated words that he tweeted, kind of like very methodically over time, so that it's stuck with people. And this is kind of like a very, just like a traditional, very, very old method of propagandization that he did, which is like repeat until other people start repeating. And this is essentially, you see a lot of like Saylor fanboys, we call them whatever you want to call them, but they're kind of like repeating the same like mantra that Saylor had. You got a lot of people who are like, oh, I'm the first European MicroStrategy. I got my orange tie. And you see like a lot of these like mimetic culture that happened, like I can only compare that to American HODL. And the fact that when he became like a meme, you saw this like British HODL, Scottish HODL, Australian HODL. You saw all these minions of HODL, American HODL, because he became a meme himself because of his awesome content, right? He said things in a way that kind of like cut through all the other people. Saylor was the same, and he employed a lot of these tactics that you can see in like old school propagandists like, Edward Bernays, the guy who invented advertising, who invented Madison Avenue and all of that stuff. He just repeated until a lot of people, like a critical mass of people started to repeat the same thing. That happened in 2024. That was kind of like established in 2024, towards the end of 2024. And then you see, like, I don't know, this is kind of like me speculating, but you can tell like Saylor probably saw that and be like, now is the right time to maybe change it up a little bit. Like, I now have amassed a critical mass of followers. I got like 5 million followers on Twitter right now. I got so much publicity. I got so many people on Twitter kind of like repeating the same thing. What else? Where else can I go? And it seems though, like in 2024, beginning of 2025, all the words related to credit that, and you can see this in the report, credit in 2020 to 2024 was deemed as something evil. That was like fiat. That was fiat shit. Credit all of a sudden in 2025 started to become something different. It wasn't that negative anymore. Now all of a sudden credit was something that belonged to Bitcoin. And then he started to talk more about derivatives, more like the financial engineering of stuff, until Stretch was introduced not much longer after. So it's kind of like looking back and looking at the data, it looks on paper very deliberate, like he was all preparing for this moment to happen, and he changed his tune before it happened to kind of like get people to believe in this like digital credit topic or concept right when he introduced Stretch. And that, I don't know if you agree with me, but I think Stretch got like instant adoption right away. I don't think there was a lot of people who were against it. It took a little bit of time for the critics of digital credit to kind of like start talking. Very few actually criticized it at the moment of launching it. And that was because he had like changed his tune, and a lot of people were already with him by that time. It was very engineered. It was like narrative engineering 101, what he did. And then afterwards, when he sold the 32 Bitcoin, you can tell like by that point, that narrative shift was kind of like exhausted. Because in the report, I also say that we got to remember that MicroStrategy sold 700 plus Bitcoins back in 2022, and the market did not react at all. There was no narrative break that happened, and the market didn't respond to it the way it responded now. And that was because the narrative that was intact back then was the Bitcoin maxi, like, hey, we believe. So when he sold 700, nobody really budged. I don't know if you even remember anyone saying anything crazy about it. And it's all public records. But now with the 32, that feels different now because the narrative has changed. The narrative, the vibes had shifted. That was engineered by Saylor himself, but then everybody else, in terms of like his followers and the Bitcoin community in general, had seen that. So when the 32 Bitcoin had sold, they had already seen that narrative shift. They could feel it. It was palpable. And that's why the reaction became so insanely hostile and even affected the market. So I think these things are like so interesting to see, and sorry for the rant here, but I think it's really interesting when you can quantify the data when it comes to narratives in this way, because you can tell how narratives actually affect markets in very deep ways, because it affects a big chunk of people who are market participants. So I think I feel blessed that nobody has really given a fuck about narrative before I have, and so I can create this product in peace. But I think it's super important to have data on these things in so many different ways. There's so many, like the use cases that I'm currently selling for is one thing, but just knowing these things and being able to have data and catch a narrative as it changes, if you have access to that data. Dude, we've never seen something like this before, so I'm very happy like the industry has perception to actually plug into that.
Wow, that's fascinating. And it's super interesting that you think that it was so deliberate, that it was a half-decade plan to go from Bitcoin maxi to digital credit salesman. From my perspective, as somebody who's, of course, studied Michael Saylor, posts about him all the time through Bitcoin News, it seemed to me to be more of a story of a guy who got an idea, started to ride a wave, and then being at whether it's being at the top of a narrative or at the forefront of a new capital market structure, like you're sort of forced to reinvent yourself all the time, right? And to try to address a bigger market. And so they went from just buying Bitcoin to the convertible debts, and then they had the biggest convertible debt market, and then they went into the preferreds, right? And experimenting with those, with the culmination of Stretch, which is supposed to be the iPhone moment. And so from my perspective, it was more of a dude who, he obviously likes to be the center of attention, wants to have a massive legacy and build one of the biggest companies in the world, and continuously has to outdo himself in order to accomplish this. Where you come in it from another perspective saying, no, this was actually a deliberate plan. It seems more maybe like government inspired, maybe.
No. I have to say, and I did, okay, yeah. And I did use the word is speculative. I'm speculating okay, yeah. Here. I really don't believe in it. It's just like it could be, and it's just like that's what's cool about narratives is like it can be interpreted in so many different ways. And I think what you're saying is probably more closer to the truth. I think even myself, like in terms of like you are in Bitcoin long enough. The way that you started out, the things that you believed in the beginning, are not necessarily the things that you still believe in after 7, 8, 9, 10 years. Because you change, your life circumstances change. So you see Bitcoin differently, you see the world differently. And this also is true for businesses and in terms of adaptability and kind of like changing up whatever you need to change up in order to survive or just to grow. So I think though, it's probably like a combination of like Saylor learning new things as he goes from his initial Bitcoin experience, right? Because even before that, he was critical about Bitcoin. We have the tweets for that as well. He thought it didn't have any chance of survival. So obviously you change, you go through experiences in life, and then you adapt and you pivot on things that might not be true, or you find out that other things are also true and you want to tap into that and explore that. But I think that process changes first in your mind, and then it becomes your actions, right? So, and then the thing you do when your mind changes, you express it through words. And then when the words become real, it kind of like shapes your reality, and then it kind of like influences your actions. So I think kind of like that is the like in chronological order how it happened. But it's interesting to see that no matter what you and I think, the proof is there. Like he talked about Bitcoin in a certain way, he started to shift, and then certain products got launched right after. And then his tone is like, I don't know, it's kind of like damage control right now. And all of that is interesting. It's all very dynamic and it's super interesting to watch.
Yeah, I think the Michael Saylor of 2021, if he had seen some of the retweets he made in 2026, he would be pretty mad at the new version. But right. We'll see. I mean, he definitely is someone who can learn on the fly and change and pivot. So let's see if he comes back to the narrative that we really grew to love in between 2020 and 2024. And so the other narrative that we need to touch on right now in Bitcoin through the lens of perception is all the infighting, right? We've got BIP 110. It'll be activated in August. We are like just a month away now. What is going on there? What do you see when it comes to the different tribes of Bitcoin? Who has narrative control? And what insights can you give us on this fighting?
I mean, the BIP 110ers, they're nobody really cares outside of our bubble. BIP 110 is not being discussed outside of our direct echo chamber at all, and it's kind of like the same thing with quantum. like quantum is really, it was like a fear du jour at a very certain time, but it didn't really spill over to wider, like, other channels where other type of people are consuming information. So this is all happening inside, and it's just bouncing in and out of our own little square. It's not really having any repercussions in terms of outsiders. It's not being discussed in other more mainstream channels that discusses Bitcoin, but it's just like not even touched. So this could be a good thing or a bad thing. I mean, like, I don't know. Like, the BIP 110ers are probably going to be like, oh yeah, but we know the truth, and the majority don't know shit, and like they really think they have understood something that the rest of the world don't. So that is going to be a reflection of that. The fact that the rest of the world is just like not tuned in. Now, that says something about their inability to actually be convincing, I think. Because I think in their language and the way they present things is more, it's in a package that is very hard to kind of like deliver wide, if that makes sense. It's like very, I don't know what I can compare it to. It's not hostile. It's just like, it's like dumb. It's not very intelligent in terms of like, hey, let me try to make BIP 110 interesting. They seem to kind of like fall back on scare tactics, on like, CSAM, stuff like that. And then it's like, it's not really that. There's a lot of other things that are worth the debate. And it's like going that route, and in terms of like what kind of content can be put there, it's just like, it's not really it's not a topic that a lot of people want to talk about, right? So it's the framing of it is in a way that is only makes sense to Bitcoiners who are already used to this like narrative warfare style. Because this is very Bitcoiny, by the way, to be very dramatic, to be kind of like very punchy, and be like a little bit edgelordy, in order to get that information, to get that attention. That has always been a thing. A lot of people who are launching products, they just want to become edgelords just to get the attention. But then the outcome, from my perspective, is like these products, they never really get adoption. They get the attention, but then they never get adopted. And this is also the same way with like older Bitcoin forks, like it's a lot of scary scenarios that the B cashers were presenting, and like everybody should be emotional and scared and jump on the bandwagon. And a lot of people didn't, and like nobody really adopted their products. So yeah, it's a little bit weird. What do you think about this?
Yeah, definitely scare tactics, definitely trying to browbeat people into their point of view, saying that they are absolutely right and that this is life or death for Bitcoin. And it's a hard pitch to really convince people to come over to your side. If you were hired as a media consultant for BIP 110ers, what would you say? How do they break out of the echo chamber? Who do they reach out to? What would help their cause in terms of narrative control?
Yeah, I don't know, man. Because I'm not really a BIP 110er, so I don't have the knowledge to kind of like what is the angle that we should leverage. But listen, the way to go about anything is just find a problem, find the people who care about that problem, and you need to make a really important decision whether that problem and the people who care about that problem are substantial enough or big enough to actually create a movement that actually changes something. That when it comes to Bitcoin Core, dude, the consensus model and like how changes actually work is not like the real world. It's not like launching a product and marketing. It's politics. Is a lot of like people. It's tribal. It's a lot of ingredients there that you have to be like a master propagandist, to really be able to convince the 51%ers. But I think if you can actually make a valid point about how this is better for Bitcoin as a whole, in terms of like the very known problems that Bitcoin has, which is plentyfold, okay? It's not spam on chain. It is a problem. It is an issue. I don't like it. But it's not like a thing that is life or death. It's not like Roger Ver said, with Samson Mow in a conference saying babies are literally dying because of this. This is a problem but I think there's way more bigger problems in Bitcoin that we need to tackle. So if I was evangelizing BIP 110, I would put BIP 110 as a solution to the bigger things that more people care about, whatever those things are, right? But you need to find the thing that a lot of people care about, and find a way to engineer the narrative so that BIP 110 is the only solution to that thing. And then you get a lot of people excited about it. Quantum, I think, was a good example of like a movement that got a lot of people really riled up. It was a little bit scare tactics, but it was like there was an overhanging thing with like AI and computation and all these other adjacent risks with AI that a lot of people in the mainstream also know about, that, you know, quantum computing can kind of break society, right? That was put into a Bitcoin framing, and that was like a better campaign, if that makes sense. BIP 110 is just like not interesting enough for enough people to really move the needle. And it's a hard pitch, and I think that is why people resort to those like cheap tactics of like scaring people and hand waving a lot, because they don't really have any other ways to really influence. I don't know. I'm kind of like ranting here, but hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, we need to, again, whether it's with a niche cause in Bitcoin like BIP 110 or just Bitcoin in general, being able to find a way to relate to the common person and the problems they're facing on a daily basis and how we can provide a solution. And we think Bitcoin can do that for the world, right? But we need to improve our narratives, the packaging, and the way that we get out to a wider audience instead of just, I'm guilty of it, of talking on X all day, right? It's part of the world, but it's not the whole world. And there's a lot more to address. So now I would like to look forward, right? You have perception, you have the ability to see, you have the narratives at your fingertips. What are the narratives that will define Bitcoin for the rest of this year, 2026, and into 27?
Can I be honest about something?
Yeah.
I think this bear market is absolutely trash in terms of new ideas, new stories, new narratives, and most important of all, memes. You know, in previous bear markets, dude, it was so much fun. So many memes that were like inspiring. Like shit, you got inspired to create more content from the content that you already saw. I feel like this time around, we're kind of like very uninspired. And I think there's like a part of it is due to some attention going elsewhere. You know, it's, I don't want to say that it is AI, but I do see a lot of Bitcoiners are like being AI pilled at this moment, and a lot of like for example, back in 2017 when I was orange pilled, I remember discovering like Satoshi, the Nakamoto Institute, you know, the writings of Bitstein and Pierre and Parker Lewis and so many brilliant minds. Robert Breedlove in the 2020 number zero in Bitcoin, Brandon Quittem, you know, I mean, all those guys. And that was like insanely good. And I think that type of content at that level right now is kind of like made by the AIers. You know, they're like, at least for me, the content that makes me like, whoa, change my worldview a little bit, and kind of like, hey, I can do shit that empowers me in new ways that I didn't know about before, which is exactly the same feeling I had when I discovered Bitcoin. That feeling is not in Bitcoin anymore. It's in that camp. And then you see people quitting the industry. Like, you know, I was at Blockstream for 4+ years, and I worked with Rusty Russell, and he was like one of the like leading Lightning guys, right? Like super early, built Lightning, you know, together with Taj and the guys, super early pioneer when it comes to Lightning. And 11 years after, he quit to build a data storage startup, you know? So it's like, no diss, no shade. It's just like this reality. People are just pivoting now. So I don't think it's like a brain drain and also attention deficit that this bear market is going through right now, that I can tell you what kind of narratives is going to dominate, because I don't see that much like inspired content, if that makes sense. So it's a tough answer. It's a tough question to answer.
From my perspective, I mean, I agree with you in a lot of ways. Those Bitcoin Think Boy pieces were awesome, right? Like Bitcoin Mycelium, you know, even the Saylor series, like Bree loves sitting down with Saylor for 10 hours and just going through history and the economics of it all. I mean, that stuff gave you things to dive into and chew on and think about. And again, iterate and create your own content off of it. So yeah, we are missing that. I think a large part of it is the suit coiner overhang of 2025. Paper Bitcoin summer really sucked the energy out of the room. A lot of new people were just brought into these treasury companies without the fundamental education of why Bitcoin is so important. And I've also said this before, that I think that Bitcoin thrives in a crisis, right? Like, it was born out of the great financial crisis, 2020, and the COVID and the money printing, being locked at home. All that stuff really galvanized a new entrance into the community, me being one of them. And so I think that Bitcoin is there. We've built a better base. The technology is better than it's ever been before in terms of UX and just wallets, everything. And so when that next crisis happens, when that next crazy inflation print happens, Bitcoin's going to be there, and hopefully we'll have some young blood come in, right? Some 25-year-olds rather than the 35, 45, 55-year-olds chalking on spaces all day. So
yeah, I was going to say us too. We need to fucking retire soon, man. No, but it's I think adoption in the future, in terms of like the people that would see something online and read it and be like super deep into it, is still going to happen, but I think it's going to be less in the form of like a movement where like everybody read, the same type of content and everybody got orange pilled in the same cycle. Now I think it's going to just be like fragmented like crazy, because this is my thesis. Like, we live in a fragmented landscape where everybody has a voice, everybody has a podcast, everybody's a voice, an influencer, everybody's fighting with the same incentives, financial incentives, to become, a podcaster, an influencer, to get sponsorships. And all these incentives are kind of like perverse in the sense of like, hey, can you really criticize a sponsor, of your show? I don't know. There's a conflict of interest. So if you become very niche, which is kind of like the way you should, because you want to attract an audience with a clear message, then the industry you create content around is going to be a niche industry where everybody knows each other. So you got to be careful. You don't want to step on too many toes, because they might be a future sponsor. I don't know. You know what I mean? So it's like, there's going to be like these controlled environments of content that's going to be produced. And then the fact that they're all kind of like scattered around will be a weird future for us, man. I think adoption is going to be kind of like growing, but in a fragmented way, instead of like this like big swooping movement of somewhat of a monoculture that drives like a critical mass of people one way. It's just going to be a lot of suit coiners in the future, but also a lot of like cypherpunks, and then everything in between that believe in Bitcoin for very different reasons that can be even contradictory to each other. And they're just going to coexist. They have to coexist. Probably going to be some entertaining, infighting and some battles, some bars getting spit. But in the end, it's going to be a culmination of a lot of loose groups that will become like the Bitcoin community, or like what a Bitcoiner is. I think all of these community, the definitions of these things are just going to be abstracted away, and there's not going to be a one thing that you can point at and be like, oh, that is Bitcoin, or this is a Bitcoiner, or this is the Bitcoin group or target audience. It's just going to be a fucking mess. But I think it's cool. It's on brand for Bitcoin, because we've always been decentralized and kind of like always been a little bit chaotic and not so organized, which is kind of like sad. That's why the shitcoiners have been able to do so much, because they have been able to organize better in a way, and they have like companies and funding that are more centralized, so you can move faster that way. And they a lot of people got lost. They lost a lot of, they gained a lot of mind share because of that shit. But I think with AI and Bitcoin, there's going to be like hopefully a new era where the parallels between Bitcoin and AI becomes clear, and more people can talk about that and make that clear. And that's the content that can drive a bigger movement. Because if you already don't know that this like utility Web3 crypto shit is dead because of AI and Bitcoin, I mean, then what kind of content are you even consuming, right? So hopefully we can create more content around that and make people clear, like there's a nice little symbiosis between Bitcoin and AI that will determine our future. And that's the only narrative that I can think of if I have to kind of like make up one on the spot, to be honest. Apart from that, it's like Bleak, man. We need memes. We need more fire content. We need just more people saying unique stuff, like something new, something fresh. And I think a lot of people share that sentiment too.
Yeah, we don't know who the next Michael Saylor will be, but there definitely will be a next Michael Saylor, right? And maybe this whole entire kerfuffle is going on right now opens the door to that new personality to come through. And again, the youth. I think there is a movement now, a recognition within the Bitcoin community that we need to be more focused on newer entrants. And I think it is coming. And it'll be ready. Bitcoin will be ready for the next catalyst, whether it's a crisis or the combination of Bitcoin and AI coming together in new ways that can push us forward. Well, Fernando, thank you so much for the time today. I think that was a really awesome discussion, and I hope that people got something out of it. If people want to find you and Perception, the platform, where should they go?
Google my name, Fernando Nikolic. You'll find the Perception site. You'll find my Twitter profile as well. And then the website is perception.to. If you want to go check it out and start a 14-day free trial, just hook up your agents to the MCP. I have a free forever plan, which gives you 5 requests a day, so you never have to pay for it. Just plug it in and start using it. And if you want to use it more, then there's ways to pay for more. But I think a lot of people are using the MCP very freely. I got like 500 MCP keys floating around, so I see activity every day. I think a lot of people are really enjoying connecting their agents to narrative intelligence. So yeah, go check it out, experiment, and find me on Twitter and send me a DM if you have any questions.
You could have been stacking free Bitcoin this whole time. Instead of just scrolling, drop a chip with Sats Drop from Rhino. 3 free drops every day. Hit a super drop and win bonus drops, multipliers, and jackpots of up to 100,000 Satoshis redeemed right in your Rhino wallet. Free Bitcoin is literally 1 drop away.